What's up guys, Turbo Velchik here back with another video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my review on Beyblade Burst Rise episode 17, entitled Genesis in Motion. So before we start this video, I'm just going to say this video will have spoilers on the episode, but if you guys have not seen the episode yet, I will leave a link in the description below to where you can watch the episode. So like always, One Rise episode covers 2 Gotcha episodes, so this episode covers episodes 33 and 34 of Beyblade Burst Gotcha. So yeah, let's begin with the analysis. So like always, the episode starts off with the Welcome to the World of Beyblade scene, which is actually a new version, which was introduced in the second half of the previous episode if it was split in two. But if you guys noticed, this episode's Welcome to the World of Beyblade scene has an error in it because it used the narration audio from the first version of the Rise Welcome to the World of Beyblade scene, which was used in the first 7 episodes of the season. So then the story continues from the previous episode where Gwen wanted to battle Joe, and then we see Arthur who wants to know about Genesis, but there is no data on it, and Apocalypse has a dark aura, and then Arthur says there's something interesting about Genesis. So then Arthur commands Joe to battle Gwen and demands him to burst Genesis in 5 seconds, and Dante gets annoyed and wants to battle Joe, but Gwen tells Dante that he can handle it and he can see how the battle will play out. So then we get into the opening and title card, and then Gwen and Joe's battle is about to start, and Joe says he'll get lucky and win, and Gwen looks at Genesis and then gets into one of his moments and finds out the battle will last 60 seconds before Joker stops spinning, and this annoys Joe. So the victories start talking about how Gwen is staying positive about defeating Joe, and Ichika mentions that Joe is not an opponent for a newbie to win against, and that reminds Dante of when he was at BC Soul, where Delta told him that keeping his launcher arm still is blading 101, and Dante tells Gwen that and gives him some advice about his launching stance. And now we're getting into the battle, which is Gwen and Royal Genesis versus Joe and Judgment Joker. So Gwen starts off with the weak launch, and Genesis can't gain speed, and Joe starts counting down until Genesis bursts, and Gwen says he's not worried, and Genesis's hybrid driver accelerates. So Genesis takes the center, and Joe and Joker get into Fate Judgment, and Joker and Genesis are both sent flying, and Genesis doesn't burst, and both bays are knocked out of the stadium. So after the first round, Taka shows the victories a replay of when Genesis was knocked out of the stadium, and it is revealed that Genesis is a burst prevention system bay like Apocalypse. So then Tango realizes that Genesis was still spinning on the ground, and then Gwen picks up Genesis off the ground and says that his power core system works, but the driver did not go into its full power because of Gwen's weak launch. So then Dante gives Gwen some more advice and tells him to loosen his shoulders, and then Gwen starts stretching, and Joe's annoyed about Gwen's performance, and he believes that Gwen is not a newbie, and he tells Gwen that he is a liar and he won't believe him no matter how many lies he says. So then Gwen says he won't mess up his launch this time, and he starts warming up, and now we're getting into the second round of the battle. So Gwen starts off with a powerful launch, and once Genesis gets into the stadium, its hybrid driver accelerates. So Genesis takes the center, and Joe and Joker get into Fortune Trick, and Joker starts attacking Genesis. So Gwen gets into one of his moments and sees someone, and they turn into a shell, and Joker stops attacking Genesis and goes for the upper deck, and then Joe heats up and we get into Joker's avatar, and Joe and Joker get into Joker Flush, and Joker clashes into Genesis, and Genesis is sent flying. So Gwen heats up, and then we see that shell again, which is actually Genesis' sealed avatar, and then Gwen and Genesis get into Superior Flux, and Genesis starts shining, and Genesis hits Joker, sending it flying, and Joker bursts, and Gwen wins, and Joe's in shock because he lost to a newbie. So Gwen reveals that the battle lasted exactly 60 seconds, and Joe walks off pouting, and Arthur comes on screen and says he likes Genesis, and wants to invite Gwen to the Inferno, but Dante says that Gwen is already a part of the victories, and when Dante tried to confirm it, Gwen starts doing math. So Arthur finds out that he has a visitor, which is revealed to be Delta, and Dante challenges Arthur, but then Delta arrives at the top floor, and Delta challenges Arthur and says he won't lose because he found out Apocalypse's weaknesses, and Arthur starts laughing and says Apocalypse has no weaknesses, and tells Delta that they will battle tomorrow, and Dante is mad because Arthur ignored him, and he goes up to Delta to see if he actually found out Apocalypse's weaknesses, but Delta ignores. So Dante wants to find out Apocalypse's weaknesses also, and he wants to train with Armin, and he says he will defeat Arthur, and then part 1 of the episode ends, which was episode 33 of Gotcha, and now we're getting into the second half of the episode, which was episode 34 of Gotcha, and unlike past Rise episodes, the name for this part has not been released at the time of recording this video. So it is later in the day, and Delta is training, and he imagines he was battling Apocalypse, and Devils clashes into the imaginary Apocalypse, and Apocalypse flies past Delta and bursts, and Delta says he will defeat Arthur. So Dante finds Delta training and gives him a water, and asks why don't they train together since they both want to defeat Arthur, but Delta declines Dante's request. So Dante tells Delta that he and the victories figured out Apocalypse's weakness, and then there is a flashback flashback where the victories are watching a replay of when Dante and Delta battled Arthur back in episode 15, and Dante noticed Apocalypse dodged Ace Dragon instead of attacking it. So after the flashback, Delta said he already knew that, and Dante tells Delta to make sure he defeats Arthur, and then he leaves. So as Dante leaves, Gwen is seen watching Delta training, and then we see Dante again, and he says he's going to practice harder than ever before. And now we get back to Delta, and he gets back to training, and Gwen starts talking to Delta and says that Delta should practice with Dante since they both found out Apocalypse's weakness. And Delta mentions that Genesis is the same way and has the same weakness as Apocalypse, and Gwen admits that Delta was right, but tells Delta that he will lose and how Dante will be disappointed, and then Gwen leaves. So the next scene takes place a day later at the Infernal Tower, and Delta and Arthur's match is about to start, and both bladers are introduced. So Delta tells Arthur that he will defeat him, and Arthur says crushing the dreams of bladers is amusing, and then Delta gets into a Devlos moment, and Delta tells the Devlos to aim for Apocalypse's sword, and Devlos says he will shatter Apocalypse into pieces, and then Delta has that fiery look to his eye. So then Arthur tells Delta that Apocalypse has no weaknesses again, and now we are getting into the battle, which is Delta and Erase Devlos versus Arthur and Prime Apocalypse. So once Devlos and Apocalypse get into the stadium, they both head for the center, and then Delta and Devlos get into Shining Launch, and Devlos and Apocalypse miss each other. So Devlos hits the stadium wall, and then Delta and Devlos get into Dual Phantom, and Devlos splits in two. So Devlos' bullet tip starts attacking Apocalypse, and the locks on Apocalypse eventually start to move, and most of the center of Apocalypse turns red. So Apocalypse goes for Devlos, and Devlos and Apocalypse miss each other again, and this reminds Dante of when Apocalypse dodged a dragon in episode 15, and Dante doesn't understand why Apocalypse did this. So Delta heats up and we get into Devlos' avatar, and then Devlos gets into Hyperflux, and then Delta and Devlos get into Clone Cannon, and Devlos' bullet tip hits Apocalypse at its sword, and the sword starts getting pushed in. And then Delta and Devlos get into Clone Impact, and Devlos hits its clone and Apocalypse, and then the screen is black and some cracks appear, and Devlos' clone flies out of the stadium, shattered. So then Arthur heats up and we get into Apocalypse's avatar, and then Apocalypse gets into Dark Flux, and Arthur says the darkness shall engulf the light, and then Arthur and Apocalypse get into Final Blast, which was originally Final Blaster in Japan, and Apocalypse clashes into Devlos, and Devlos' Hyperflux is absorbed, and then we see Apocalypse's avatar, and it stabs its tail into Devlos' avatar, and then Erase Devlos is shattered. So Arthur wins the battle, and Delta is in absolute shock over Devlos' destruction, and then Arthur says there is no light that can overcome Apocalypse's darkness. Then Delta falls to his knees upset over Devlos, and Dante is in shock over Devlos being destroyed, and the episode ends. So anyways, Genesis in Motion was a good episode, and I did enjoy it, and I was glad to see Royal Genesis in action in the dub. And also, the battles in this episode are good, and the animation of Apocalypse's avatar stabbing Devlos' avatar was also done really well. But also, a complaint I had with this episode was when Devlos was being shattered, because in the Japanese version of the episode, Devlos' scream was way more emotional than it was in the dub, but I have gotten over that. So anyways, in the next review, I'll be going over episode 18, Dragon vs. Apocalypse, where Dante finally has his rematch with Arthur. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this review. If you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, please subscribe, please follow me on social media, links will be in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys later.